Hi, welcome back to Barely Keto. I'm Carl. Let's get started. Occasionally, I like to post pictures of what Jim and I are having at night on my Instagram account, barely.keto. And I had a couple requests from a friend to make one of the things that we had for dinner last weekend for this episode. So this week, we're going to do slow cooker chili and cheddar blue cheese biscuits. Now, for this, you're going to need some things that I didn't go over in the kitchen setup. You want to get yourself like one of these guys. It's this is silicone. It's 6 cups. It's sort of like a muffin top. And then you're also going to need a scoop. So be sure you've got that handy, just for the dough. And your slow cooker. This is that green pan, essential pan that I like to use. And I did some of this work off camera just because I'm kind of late this morning and I got to get it in the crock pot at a certain time to have it, be ready for dinner tonight. So I cheated. So I've also got some ground beef over here that we're going to be using. Again, because of my blood factors, I have to be careful of how much fat I have from dairy and beef specifically. So I cook this on the stove every time and then strain it. And I don't just throw it down the drain because we have a sewer system and that would clog up the filter. So I also did 1 bell pepper. I was going to use a red one to kind of fake pinto beans. I've made this before and given it to some friends. A couple, Ange and Brad, who are also looking at their blood factors as well. And the feedback from Brad was it should have beans, and it can't have beans because you can't have the carbs. So I thought a red bell pepper might be a nice hack, but I went to use it and it was rotten. So I'm subbing out a yellow one from the fridge. And I did a rough cut on the onion, so there's a Vidalia onion in here as well, just to give the chili a bit more bulk to sort of psych me out on not having the beans. So I browned that on the stove, and I also threw in some beef sausage to give it some bulk as well. So sort of looking at this from a psychological point of view, you do miss the kidney beans. So ground beef, garlic. This stuff's fantastic. I'm not sure if you can read the label or not. I'll put it up this way as well. These are really, really good peppers. So it's a jalapeno spread. It looks like it's Giuliano. I had to order this online. It says it's hot and spicy. It does not disappoint. So we've got that, some tomato paste, spices. I've got, what do I have in here? Chili powder, sriracha powder, cumin, oregano, black pepper, a total of 25 ounces of canned diced tomatoes. And that all goes in the slow cooker for, 6 to 8 hours. Because I've pre-cooked some of this stuff, I could take it off whenever I want, which is, a nice hack too. But it could all go in here uncooked if that's the way you want to roll. Again, I just have to be careful of the extra fat if I can. So let's throw this together. It's really simple. Put in the beef. Toss in the garlic. Then the veg. The nice thing about cooking onion as well is it helps it release its flavor. I love onion. It calls, you could do a half an onion. You could use minced if you wanted to for something like this. Slow cookers are great for substituting in your dehydrated spices. So you could use garlic powder if you'd rather. But I had the onion, so why not? And the spices. And the recipe for this will be up on the Google Drive. Now it calls for a 4-ounce jar of the pepper, and that's pretty much what I have left in here. So I'm just going to roll with this. My friends also know that getting a recipe out of me can be problematic because I vamp and improvise so much. But for you, I'm trying to keep it written down. So you got that. A 6-ounce can of tomato paste. And the other thing I like about this recipe is it's really scalable. So if you wanted to use, cut this in half, instead of using a 6-ounce can, just pick up a tube of tomato paste. And you can get your 3 ounces out of that, and then you're not wasting the tomato paste. This is one of those things that I've learned can be a trap for hidden sugars. So when you're selecting your tomato paste, just make sure you check it for sugar. And then your diced tomatoes with the fluid. Now, except for the cook time, this could practically be a 5-minute lunch. Stir that all together. And I tend to come back once an hour to just stir everything in. Make sure it's evenly distributed. That's it. So I'll throw the cover on this and set it, like I said, for about 6 to 8 hours, and we'll be ready for dinner. So I'll come back when it's time to do the cheddar and blue cheese biscuits. And I make the blue cheese dressing that's in that from scratch. So I did that yesterday. It is fantastic. It's so good. I have a true confession to make. I botched the recipe for the biscuits, so I have to do it again. So here we are. I cheated a little bit off camera. Here's your silicone muffin top, basically, is what it is, a muffin top pan. You're definitely going to want to butter that or the biscuits will stick like crazy. And then because they're so flexible, you always have to bake it on a baking sheet. And then we're going to do our dry ingredients in one pan, our wet ingredients in the other, combine them, and then we'll teach Schitt's Creek what folding something into a dough is. So with the wet, I've got 2 eggs, 3 tablespoons of avocado oil already, and then I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of my own blue cheese dressing. So this has yogurt in it and buttermilk, actual blue cheese, and some spices. The recipe will be up on the Google Drive. And the nice thing about using this with this recipe is that the buttermilk will help the leavening process, so we should get a fluffier biscuit. So just gonna put that in. Okay, so just whisk this together. Break those eggs up. And you can use melted butter. I'm just trying to be more conscious of my my dairy consumption because of that factor in my blood. So I'm trying the avocado oil. And then this is 1.5 cups of the King Arthur keto wheat flour. You can make this with almond flour or coconut flour as well. I've done it both ways. This will be the first time I've made it with a King Arthur keto wheat flour, so I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to turn out. If you make it with the almond flour, they end up being about 1/2 inch thick, so I'm hoping that this will rise a bit more. So we've got the pre-measured flour in here, and then I've got baking powder, smoky paprika, a little bit of salt, and some garlic powder. I meant to do the dry first. If you do the dry first, you save yourself a dirty tool. But I am flustered. And the reason I have to reshoot this is that yesterday, at some point, my iPad decided to change its focal point, and everything was like this. I'm like, that's not good. All right, so that's in. And then we're going to mix the wet in with the dry. Stay. Doing it this way, you just get your eggs all nice and mixed together with everything. Then another spoon. So this is going to make a really kind of a sticky dough. You don't want to overmix it. Now, if I were using the almond flour, this is mixed already, so it just goes to show how much the King Arthur flour really is more like traditional processed flour. Now, you're going to take a hit on your carbs with this, but you know, my goal is not to be in ketosis. My goal is to lower my A1C, improve my cholesterol, and lose some weight. So I like to splurge every now and again. The other thing I know is that I want to find something that I can live with for the rest of my life. And if I go too hard, I'm not going to stick with it. So this is my compromise. And it works for me so far. Now we're going to fold in, and it won't fold as easily, so I might have to knead this because this dough is definitely more like a traditional biscuit dough with flour. But you want to do about 3/4 cup of cheese. I like the sharp shredded cheddar. And technically the folding is you just sort of turn the dough on itself so you're not smashing the cheese in there. But this is interesting. This is a lot thicker. So I'm going to kind of slice it in a little bit. All right, so that looks about good enough. So then we're going to use our dough scooper. And you're going to do about 3/4 of this. And then just put it right in there. And you can even them out at the end. Now, as soon as you add any kind of liquid to baking powder, it begins its leavening process. So this is definitely something you want to do right before you're ready to put it into the oven. I'm just sort of pushing those down a little bit. I will say, when you make it with the other flours, it's an easier recipe to work with. The dough's easier. I think that's pretty close to even, so I'm going to call that. So now this whole thing will go into the oven for 20 minutes at 350 degrees. I'll see you on the other side of that. All right, it's the moment of truth. You want to test these with a toothpick to make sure that it comes out clean, and that's going to be your done test. But that is really a good looking biscuit. You can put a couple of tablespoons of melted butter together with some parsley and then brush that on before you serve them. Serve them like this. I'm serving it with chili. So I also sometimes will split them in half or crumble them into the bottom of the bowl and then put the chili on top of that. And then you want to cool them on a rack. But I learned yesterday, and with the almond flour, actually, these come out much easier. So another little trick, these come out easier than yesterday's, which came out, they were very hard to get out of the pan right away. So it did make a fluffier biscuit. So there you go. Now there's a little more paprika in this, which explains the color. I put a full teaspoon of paprika in there yesterday, and I thought it was a bit too much. So I scaled it back to a half on this one. You can just take these out. If you use the coconut flour or the almond flour, you're going to want to add about a half a teaspoon of xanthan gum to help hold it together, basically. And I'll put all this in the recipe for you. The other thing to keep in mind is you can't store these at room temperature. So once they've cooled, you're going to want to put them in a container and keep them in the refrigerator because of the amount of dairy product in it. And, you know, check the dates on your dairy products. That's a good litmus test for how long they'll stay fresh. So, you know, you could get easily 3 to 5 days out of this. Wow, that smells really good. That's it. So I wanted to give a quick status update. I've lost a few more pounds. I'm down, I think, a total of 55 now. Jim is now at his lowest weight since he and I have known each other. And I got to tell you, I feel like I've hit a bit of a wall. I'm stuck. It took me 3 weeks to lose 5 pounds at this point. So I think I got to figure out how to turn the screw again. And I think the easiest thing to do for that is going to be to start cutting down my alcohol. So I'm going to go to a 2-drink, 2 days a week model and make that like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday only thing. Because it's just so many empty calories and it seems like the low-hanging fruit on all of this. So until I start figuring out an exercise plan, which I definitely need to do because now that I've lost weight, hanging a little uncomfortably in areas that I'm not used to hanging. And I know part of that's age, but I deflated the balloon pretty quick. So I'm going to have to bulk up somehow. So I think I'm going to need to start doing some toning. So that's the next plan to keep this moving. And, you know, again, I started this whole channel just to keep myself honest to myself. So here's hoping that this helps yield some better results. Stick with it. Thanks.